I felt it to the core. And I knew in that moment that I had to, for the first time in my life, stand up for myself. That I had to stand in my truth, no matter what it meant to anybody else. Who cares?
Right.
Stand and own my truth. And in doing that, everything shifted.
When she smiles at you, she'll say, angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. No, no, angels don't lie. Angels don't lie. No, 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 no.
So welcome to Angels Don't Lie. I'm your host, Jeanne Street. So everybody meet Hamilton.
Hi, everybody.
Hamilton Brower.
I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so Hamilton Brower, tell our audience, my audience, who you are and a bit about yourself so they understand first who you are.
Okay. Wow, that's like a Grand Canyon question for somebody like me.
I know.
I could go into many areas.
So let's do this. I'll slow that question down a little bit. Let's tell the viewers your name, where you reside, and your mission, your life mission, what you're working on.
Okay.
Let's start there.
That sounds good. Well, first of all, as we've said, I'm Hamilton Brower, and I live here, right?
Not here.
A few miles away.
Yes.
In New Milford, Connecticut. And by way of New York City. I was in New York City for 21 years before here. And I've been up here for 14 years now, which is really great. I love
Where did you originally hail from?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
From Bucks County, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
which is very, very much like this area.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost identical to this area now,
right?
When I was growing up. Really, I think I'll just real quickly, after my advertising years in Manhattan, I was on a quest to find my purpose. And we'll go into that, why I was on that quest a little bit later. But I have been seeking my life's purpose. And I know so many people do that. So many people. I was having a great conversation with some friends the other night on Sunday, and we were all talking about when you ask somebody why they're here, who they really are, and why they're here. So many people, it's about 90% of people say, I don't know. I don't know why I'm here. And I love talking about legacy and our life's purpose, because I just feel like, when we have that, when we find that, we can live so much more of an authentic life that has an opportunity to make a difference for others. And that's really what I'm here to do, is to get out of here and to get more into here and become a heart-centered servant. Because I've finally, after many years, gotten out of my own way. Mm-hmm. And gotten into my heart to be of service to others. And that's really what I'm about.
And you have passion around food, around health, maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, I really,
go back.
I love
Jeannie's
dog is right here, Hope. And you know what? That's perfect, because we all need more hope these days.
She's like,
except for this one.
Hang out with you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, my story, which I won't get into right now, but it's not the story that I thought I would be sharing when I was a kid. I thought it would look so much cooler. I really did.
Actually, I think it's really cool, but
I do. Now I kind of do as well. But it was a journey that I really never would have written for myself. But I feel like it's, like any of our journeys, it's led us to where we are and made us into the people that we are right now. And that's so cool and so key. And so my pain that I lived for so many years through illness and living with HIV for 33 years, I managed to finally reach a point where I wasn't stuck in survival mode anymore. And I just turned it inside out and
So
thought,
let me slow you
yeah,
down.
okay,
Let me slow you. I want to
I'm
slow
not
you
gonna
teeny
go
tiny
there.
bit because I want to get to that question next.
Okay.
First, I want to say, like, I've interviewed Hamilton before, and we've gone to some really cool places. And I'm going to ask my team to make sure that we put the link for that conversation in the copy so people can find that after when this podcast is live too. So one of the places we didn't go in our conversations ever was this experience when you were living in New York and as a gay man, as you know, in the 80s, and then having your
Who's gay?
jackass.
I had to.
Yeah. It's a big reveal. Shock. Yeah, what that was like first and foremost, like, let's slow it down just a teeny minute. So you in New York City,
Yep.
in the height of the 80s, the height of when AIDS and HIV was really out there, what was it like for you living during that time and trying to succeed and get ahead? Like, you told me your mentality back then was like different than it is now. So your mentality back then was what?
Wow, my mentality back then, when I was diagnosed, was incredibly fear-based.
We didn't go there yet. We didn't talk about the diagnosis. I want you to say, like,
before that?
Yeah.
Oh, I was having a ball.
Yeah. That's what I want to be. Like, who
I
were you?
was. So from when I moved into the city, which was 1986, I had a ball. I was working in advertising right out of college, and I got great jobs. I don't know how, but I sort of talked my way into the number one agency in the world. And that was kind of my goal. I thought, if I'm going to do something, I really want to do it.
You went big.
I did. And I worked at J. Walter Thompson. I had a great job there and was assigned to really cool clients. Yeah.
Did you feel at that time that you couldn't be touched by HIV? Did you feel threatened by it? Like, I'm just curious on what you were thinking about.
Personally, I think all around me during that time, from 86 through 88, 89, people were starting to worry and starting to talk about what was going on around us.
Right.
I personally was so on my A game, and I was, just out of college, and I was having a great time, making a lot of new friends, working my butt off and having a blast doing it and getting recognized for that. I think I'm one of the only males who, of course, would be in like W magazine. It was like W magazine, like movers and shakers in their 20s. And I thought, how did I get that? And then I realized that one of my good friends was in the PR group at W magazine.
So you were really living.
I was having a blast.
Yeah.
And
you were in a relationship then?
I was a relationship with a guy named Ramsey Fetterman. And he was a writer.
And did you feel like this thing couldn't touch you? You know how you feel at certain ages in your life when you feel like, oh, like nothing bad's going to happen to me. Like, that's the outside world.
Yes. I really felt like it wasn't going to get me because isn't it interesting? I was just going to say, I knew myself. I was dedicated to my work. I would get out late, advertising is crazy hours. I'd work out at the gym, go out, go meet Ramsey somewhere, and we'd go have a great dinner with friends. And we really had this fun life going on. And then, on weekends, we'd go out and play with the dogs in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which was an hour and 15 minutes away at my parents' place. And we really had a great thing going on. And I never once considered, honestly, never once really considered this is going to get me. Okay. I thought I had kind of insulated myself from that.
So here we have the great picture of who Hamilton was. And so then all of a sudden, did you start not feeling well? Like, what led you to the doctor? Like,
no, wow. That's a great question.
We haven't gone there.
You're a good questioner. Responsibility. I'm such a, I shouldn't make fun of it because it's a good thing. And I do recognize that. I am responsible to a T, reliable. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And I saw, this was in 1988, many guys, especially in the gay community in Manhattan, coming down with something that nobody knew what it was and starting to get sick. And it started to encroach on my circle of friends. And these were young guys. I was 20, oh my gosh, I was 25 at the time.
Mm.
And so like the responsible guy that I wanted to try to be, I said, you know, I don't know why, but I think we should all get tested.
Okay.
We don't know what this thing is, but very much like what people are experiencing today.
I was just going to say that. I was
Yeah.
feeling like this,
I knew you were. I kind
when
of picked up
COVID
on
came
that.
in, it must have felt so similar.
I had in March of 2020 a huge pit in my stomach.
Mm.
It is identical to what we experienced back then.
Right.
It was very fear-based. It was very standoffish,
Right.
like you didn't know what to think.
Red letter, right? Like
Very much so. And then when someone gets it, they're isolated, and it's isolating because
Mhm.
you think, I can't really go out and
No.
meet new people. And, you know, I mean, we're sexual beings. We're all supposed to be experiencing all of it. And you couldn't. It became a very taboo, kind of shame-filled, stigma associated thing.
Right.
And it's fascinating because it's identical to what's going on now.
So, you know, it's interesting because when you were going through it, it was in mostly here in the gay community. In other
Mhm.
parts of the world, it was women and children as well, having this, you know, come to them, the HIV and the AIDS come to them,
Mhm.
isolating specific groups. And when COVID came in, it didn't isolate to one group. Like it was everyone. It was an equalizer.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And that to me was the even scarier part of
Mhm.
COVID, truly, because all of a sudden I thought, wow, this is now everyone.
Right.
But
see, yeah. So
yeah,
let's
so
get into a conversation about what you told me
Yeah.
about that, because that to me, like, what they have shown me is like this is us. This is a form of healing. Like everything that's not based in love has to be uprooted. And what hasn't been based in love is isolating and stereotyping and separating from religion to sexual preference to skin
Mhm.
color to, you know, job to status, whatever it is. You know, anytime we mark another person or a group of people, that's not love.
I love that you just used that word. I haven't heard anybody use that word, mark other people, because I love to talk about labels. And I understand that because we're human and because we have the ability to communicate and we use words, vocabulary, right? We label things and people in order to identify them.
Right.
And that's it's a very ego-based kind of thing, right?
Right.
Because ego is our identity in this time and space continuum and stuff. But when we, you know, talk about someone and we describe them, if somebody doesn't remember their name or whatever, we label.
And
Labeling divides, though.
But it can be done innocently. Like
it can be.
Not on purpose, but
Right.
That's where the pain comes in, right? Because as the person that is being labeled or has already been marked, it doesn't feel good. And you know it's out there energetically, especially when you're so sensitive, which you being the responsible person, I feel like you've always been highly sensitive to following those guideposts from God. And that's why it's like, oh, this is the responsible thing to do. This is what God is showing me to do. It's not even just responsible. This is, you know, connection and let me show up. So
Exactly.
Let's circle back to, all right, so you and your group, this came up and everybody decided to go and get tested.
Yep.
And you weren't having any symptoms.
Oh no, I had nothing. I was as healthy as an ox.
And so what happened? What was that like?
So at this time, remember it was 1988 at this point. So anybody who was diagnosed HIV positive, pretty much at that point was in the 94% group that was going to go into full-blown AIDS and die. That's what was happening. 94% of people diagnosed at that point were dying. And it was a few days, I don't remember the exact timing, but it was 3 or 4, 5, 6 days after I'd taken the test, and I had completely forgotten about it. I wasn't anxious. It wasn't even on my mind.
Right.
I was the one who was trying to convince more of my friends to do it, to take the test, because I was just so convinced that it was the right thing to do. But I was also really confident that mine was going to be negative. And I was at the office and the ad agency one day, and the phone rang, and it was the doctor's office. And the receptionist on the other end said, Hamilton, we'd like to set up an appointment with you. And my heart sank immediately, because I just said, wait, what do you mean you need to set up an appointment?
Right.
If my test was negative, you would have just called me and said it's negative. And I don't know. I didn't even process much more than that. And basically was so busy with work and life, or I thought I was, right? I hadn't prepared for this as an option. So I made her put the doctor on the phone, and I made him tell me, which was kind of weird. I don't know why I did that, but while I was at work, and he did. It took me 10 minutes to convince him. But and he did say, I'll only do this if you make the appointment for tomorrow. And I said, okay, yeah. Right. And he told me, and I remember, I just remember I went white. And I remember my secretary, we had secretaries at the time, and I told her after I'd gotten off the phone and gotten myself together, because I started crying.
She was the first person you told?
No, I didn't tell her.
Oh, okay.
But I did tell her that I was taking the rest of the day off, and I had to go. And she looked at me and she said, "Are you okay? You look as though you've just seen a ghost." And I said, "I think I have." I have to tell this next part.
Good.
Okay, because I left the office and did something that I'd never done before and never did after that, because I never left the office. I was a workaholic. I went straight to the gym, which was a few blocks away. And I just started working out like a fiend. And I thought to myself, this is not going to get me. And I mean, I was in victim mode for maybe a half an hour before I got to the gym and got changed and started working out. And I just thought, this is not going to get me. And it was through fitness and exercise, actually very similar to our friend Valerie, that I worked through, I think at least initially.
That's how you were processing it.
I was processing it.
And your feelings.
Yeah, but I have to mention this because my friend Waleed is probably on watching. I reached out to him yesterday, and he reached out actually to me when he saw the flyer. He was on vacation with his family in Miami for 3 of the 6 days he was supposed to be away. The day I was diagnosed, the day I was in the gym, that was the 3rd day. He had gone to his psychic person, a channeler kind of person, that morning for a session. And she said to him, think of something that makes you happy, something that you love. And I don't know, she said a couple things. And then she said, oh, and you're thinking of somebody, named Harrison. No, Hamilton. And she said my name to him. And here we go. This is the part that Yeah, it gets me.
That's why I brought the tissue.
I like that. I can also use my sleeve kind of. But she told him that something traumatic had happened to me, and that he had to go to me right away and tell me that everything was going to be okay.
Mm.
He walked into the gym a half an hour after I got there, which would have been then an hour after I'd been given the diagnosis.
But he was away.
He was away. He left his family in Miami. He flew home to New York. I saw him walk in the gym, dropped his bag at the front desk, beelined for me, and he doesn't even go to that gym. He didn't go to my gym. And I asked, what are you doing here? And he told me that little story. And he said, I just have to let you know, I don't know why I'm even doing this. I feel like a zombie. I have to come to you and let you know that everything's going to be okay.
God's messengers.
I was blown away. He believes fully, thank you, Waleed, by the way, that he is a guardian angel for me somehow.
I think that God is so great that
I know God is great.
That he worked through you to help other men get tested, to be aware, to not be afraid. And even though you didn't understand where he was going to bring you. Right. And he was like, look, I've got you. And your friend, Waleed, God sent him. He was like, this is the only person that's going to listen. He knew how pure he was, and he was going to be able to leave his family in a loving way to say, I got to fly home and I've got to do this. And right. And I think it had to happen in that kind of way through a third party who I ran into him. So we loved each other, but we ran into each other maybe once every 4 months. Right. So removed. He wasn't in your inner circle. He wasn't gay, his family, totally different. Totally. And somebody you respected. And he was a backup singer for Cyndi Lauper. So cool. Right? He was great. He's a great guy. So how cool is that? This cool guy who you respect comes into the gym. You must have been flooded with what? Who just died? I sat there literally mouth drop open, tears streaming down my face, and I could hardly talk, but I was able to say to him, who sent you? Mm-hmm. What? I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that I had told nobody at that point. Right. And he knew somehow and delivered this message that I will tell all of you, I know without question came from God. And I know I hung my entire life on that moment. From the first hour that I was diagnosed, I knew I was here for a bigger purpose. And this leads us to hope. It can be the smallest thing. It's a small miracle moment if you are awakened to it like that. Yeah. God was saying, you're going to go through some big stuff. He never said it was going to be easy. He never said you weren't going to go through it. He just gave you as much love as you needed to carry you forward to the next shit show that you entered. Yeah. So let's fast forward to when things started to get real. Or do you want to talk about going to the doctor? No. Let's talk about when things started to get really real. The HIV had progressed. Yeah. And now you're sick. Now I'm sick, and this was. And how long? Yeah, I was just going to say 7. It was 6 years later, 1994, and it's just the way it works. It's the way the virus works in your body. And I have to add, I think the way that accumulating toxicity works in our bodies, because at that point I had been on major experimental meds and drugs, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, things that had been shelved because they were too toxic for cancer patients. And they thought, oh, look, here's some AZT. Let's give this to them, and see what it does. And I don't know how I made it through all of that, but all I know is that in 1994,
despite my, my desire to control this virus and to still try to paint the picture of my journey the way I wanted it to look, not the way, I still hadn't gotten out of here yet.
Mm.
And I developed meningitis as a, what was I then? Whatever, 1994, do the math, Hamilton, 31 years old. And at 31-year-old, and this was, remember, 6-7 years after I had started going to the gym so much, I was pumping myself up because I wanted to create this external facade of strength and health. And it was equally as much for me as it was as a projection to the external world. I didn't want anyone to know I was sick. I didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want to be identified.
Did your family know?
By that? No. I kept it.
I
kept it. I held it because I was I did.
Oh my God. Like that alone,
Right.
like, that manifests into more like that pain, that worry, that like,
well,
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I know I can't either really, but I did. And it was a big part of it was because my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 months before I got my diagnosis. And I couldn't add any more stress to the family, but especially to her. Right. And she was she and I were, it was ridiculous. I mean, we were just like soulmates times a million. And so anyway, in 1994, I started to develop what they call opportunistic infections, OI. And a lot of people heard of, people getting pneumonia, AIDS patients, wasting syndrome, where they would lose all their body weight. And I developed meningitis. And that was just, for whatever reason, my thing that I got, my opportunistic infection. I had also developed, which, there had to be something very physical, visible, so that I couldn't hide anymore. And I chuckle about it now because it's just so ridiculous. It's like, when we're in high school and we're going to the prom and you wake up in the morning and you have a zit like right here. Well, I had a KS lesion right here on the side of my nose. And I had a second one on my leg, my inner thigh. And I only bring that up because of the next chapter that we'll go into in a little bit. I had these physical, external, to me, it was like a neon sign,
I mean, here
that
you
something's
are,
wrong.
A gay man. Like, I can't imagine that, like, even being brought up in a family with all boys. Like, when did you tell them? Did everybody know you were gay? What did that look like if we go back there?
They did. At that point, they knew.
No, I'm talking about as a child. Like when?
Oh, growing up?
Yeah.
It was really interesting because I didn't know. I didn't know exactly what it was. I can remember this one story, and I have to share it because it's kind of funny. It is funny. And who knows who it might help somebody, I don't know. But so it was 3 brothers. There were 4 of us, 4 sons, and my dad. So there were really 5 boys and my mom reining us all in.
And the angel.
Yeah, exactly. Truly. And we were at the beach one summer, and I must have been, I would say probably around 8 or so. And we're all playing with Frisbee and throwing footballs and stuff on the beach and running around. And the people were jogging down the beach, this one couple in particular. And my dad made a comment about the female part of the couple and said something about, oh, why not just say it, right? This was whenever, this was in the late 60s. My dad said something about like, hey boys, get a load of her. I bet she won't have trouble floating in the water and that kind of thing.
Right.
We all knew, and we all like looked and chuckled and saw her running, and she was very well built and well put together. And I got the joke and was chuckling. And then I noticed myself watching the guy running next to her, and talk about like fit, you know, and every time he ran, like every muscle just was like, I saw him as like Iron Man or something. And and I just thought, I didn't think I was attracted to that. I couldn't pull my eyes away. And back to her though, I was like, okay, yeah, I get the joke. And I really thought like, wow, I can't wait to be like him someday.
Oh.
And that's how I viewed it, even up through, gosh, most of my teens, really, or let's say the first half of my teens.
Right.
And then it became pretty evident to me.
And so when did you tell your family?
It was right at the end of college. End of college.
This is a pattern, right? So here you have this awareness, but you can't speak it. And this is
because I wasn't sure.
Right. And then here you are with the HIV. You don't talk to your parents about it, but then you get tested and then you're sure, but you still don't tell them. You hold that all to yourself. That's a lot to carry around.
It's a lot.
You carried a lot. And so now God is outing you.
That's so interesting. And how do we make it okay and comfortable for all of us just to be exactly who we are?
I think it's, you know, it's fascinating, the human condition of what we think we have to carry in order to protect others.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We don't want to hurt them. We don't want to disappoint them. And so we'd rather shame ourselves and
isolate ourselves.
Right. And so here you are now you're this adult man who's been living with HIV for 6 years. Now your mom is not well. I can imagine that too was hurting your heart, like in pain, you know, your mom. And now you have marks on you. Right. And you're probably like, really?
Oh, I was angry. I was angry. I was asking for guidance. What do you want me to do?
Right.
Like, what do I have to do? You know, I wasn't living a life of debauchery. And sometimes I would joke with my friends and said, now, if I knew this was going to be my story, maybe I would have, lived a little more like outside that kind of box.
Right.
I had my share of fun,
but being a responsible person,
being very responsible. And you're right. I think I was holding on to a lot of it, thinking I was protecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, that's just interesting. It's kind of like overparenting. You know, if we don't give if we don't allow the kids to learn the lessons themselves, sometimes, like if we keep taking that away from them, we're not doing them any favors. So I didn't realize how selfish I was being by not allowing others to respond, not allowing them to help.
Because now you're making love conditional. You're not receiving, you're only giving.
Right. And it was my family that I did that to. I did not do that to most of my friends in New York City. They knew.
Because it's easier to do.
It was easier.
For some reason, our family, for us, we withhold. We have this pattern of like, oh, I'll keep them safe, or, you know, are we keeping our ego safe? It's really fascinating. So let's fast forward to you when you're in the doctor. I don't know if you're in the doctor's office, but when you're really ill. And
so then that was a year later.
Okay.
Quickly, just to kind of explain why that happened.
Yep.
The treatment for meningitis, that I had fungal meningitis, is something. It's chemotherapy, chemical therapy.
Yes, this is the one.
And it's called cryptococcal. It was cryptococcal meningitis. And the chemo that they put me on was called amphotericin B. And all the nurses kind of looked, and they looked right. And they looked at me and my boyfriend, Steve, at the time, and said, okay, everybody calls amphotericin B Ampho the Terrible. And it's because it is horrific. the treatment is going to be 60 days in a row, every day for 8 hours a day, receiving this chemo.
For 8
hours every single day for 60 days in a row. It was horrific. We have to do a test on you because most people, 85% of people, are allergic to it. And I said, okay, well, let's do the test. And I don't remember how they did it. Probably gave me a shot or something, and with just a little bit of it. And sure enough, within 5 minutes, it was horrible. It's called rigors, which is very similar when we die. Your body just starts shaking uncontrollably. You feel like you're freezing from the inside out, and you stiffen up. So I was laying on the gurney in the hospital doing this test, just bouncing off the gurney practically. I said to my partner at the time, can you like hold me down, like lay on top of me? I feel like I'm going to bounce off the gurney. And he was very much rooted in fear at this point. Not surprisingly, I was too. Couldn't believe this was happening. But that experience of the chemo for 60 days, and I lost 48 pounds.
Wait, you did it even though your body?
Oh yeah, they treat you with Benadryl.
Oh.
Liquid Benadryl first before.
Oh,
so your body is still highly allergic to it.
But let's treat you anyway.
But they're gonna do Benadryl first, a Benadryl shot, 97, 96, and I'd be out for 8 hours, pretty much, getting this chemo. And that's what it was doing to my body, but I wasn't reacting to it because they had blocked the allergy pathway. Mm-hmm. So that's not good for us, right? And so this treatment and losing 48 pounds over that 60 days, most of the doctors not talking to me at all about nutrition, even though I was begging them for, what can I be doing?
Help me.
Yeah, we're blasting my insides with this stuff, and it's taking out all the good with the bad. And that led me down like a bit of a spiral. As we all know, they say it, right? Chemo, a lot of times for cancer and things, the treatment is worse than the disease. And the treatment was very toxic and took a real toll on my body and
your mental
and my mental health. Yeah. But yeah. I was left with a much weakened immune system. At that point, I had nothing left. It's what chemo basically does.
Right.
Takes you down to a neutropenia kind of state, which is
so then you can't fight off any other infection. Right.
So I was susceptible to everything at that point, and that freaked me out. That really, I was freaked. And is this where you want me to go, to the doctor's office? Yeah. Yeah. So it was in 1995, in March of 1995, I had gone, I talked my way in, again, good talker, talked my way into a medical trial, a drug trial, and it was for protease inhibitors. And that was the class of drugs. It was a new class of drugs that I had heard about through my first boyfriend, Ramsey, who is now out in Los Angeles working with Barbara Streisand on a movie. Mm-hmm. And Barbara she is a media junkie and was really good friends with Peter Jennings from the news, mm-hmm. right? And Peter was very interested apparently in HIV and everything. And his files had been confiscated by who knows who at one point because he was on to a lot of interesting information. Through them, I learned about this drug treatment trial, and I talked my way in. It was starting the very next day. The trial was closed. They had all the participants. They said, "Sir, it's closed. We can put you on a waiting list, but it's starting tomorrow. Like, this isn't going to happen." I don't know how. I called them back. Ramsey did his thing. I don't still to this day know who called them, but the clinic called me back. It was Dr. David Ho, who was Time Magazine's Man of the Year that year through his work with protease inhibitors, called me and said, "We don't know who you are, but you're in the trial. Can you get here today? We have to do a lab tests and everything." And so I got into that trial and participated in that for 3 months. And that led to hope, a lot of hope for me. Once again, I kind of pulled that life hanger out and remembered what Waleed had told me on day one. And I thought, okay, something greater than me is at work here. Yeah. And I knew what it was, but I didn't know how it was working. And it led to one more level down for me, which I didn't think was possible. One more rock bottom kind of journey, part of the journey. And that was 3 months later. It was about a week before the end of the trial, the drug trial. And I wasn't feeling any positive effects or anything. And they told us, you'll pretty much know if you're on the medication. So I was kind of bummed out. I went to see my team of doctors 1 week before the end of the trial. And it was some of the doctors from the drug trial and my personal doctors also. So there were 4 of them. And they had this conversation with me, called me in to have this conversation about, what's happening to your physical body. It's dying. And all I heard was, then they, in their compassionate attempt, they said, if we were in your shoes, we would go home and get our affairs in order. And all I heard from them was, go home and die. Right. You're sitting there deer in the headlights. And I don't know what happened. It was in that moment when I really didn't think I could go any lower. My team of doctors was, in my view, giving up on me. And I had had enough. I slammed my hand down on the desk in front of all 4 of them. And I know they jumped. And I just got in their face. I had to. They had to play their part too. Now in hindsight, I know this. And I got in their face and I pointed at them and I said that this is not going to be my story. And in that moment, I finally took my life back and took responsibility back from them that I had surrendered, that I had given up.
This is not my story.
It's not my story.
And all along, God had been with you. And all along, God was like, let's keep getting it out of you. Let's tell them what your story is. Tell them who you are as a child. And then as a young man struggling with HIV, tell them who you are. Put the marks on you. Tell them who you are. Put you in front of a group of doctors in this broken down body, like beaten up. It's sick, but you were able to finally stand up and say, nope, not my story. God finally got you to say,
literally, no,
and own it.
Totally own it. I felt it to the core, and I knew in that moment that I had to, for the first time in my life, stand up for myself. That I had to stand in my truth, no matter what it meant to anybody else. Who cares?
Right. Stand
and own my truth. And in doing that, everything shifted.
So this is like so amazing we're having this conversation, because earlier today I was talking to Sophia, who's on my team. We had a quick check-in and we were just talking about depending on when this comes out, but we were talking about this Sunday's Easter and about the message of our journey to the cross. Our message that we were taught from Jesus is not to martyr. Like, we have been given this to remember what we've been given, but we hold in us some semblance of pain, of worry, of shame, of people pleasing. And when we stand and we say, no more, that's not my story, I'm ready, God's ready, he's showing me all of these beautiful things, that's the miracle of the remembrance. That's when healing happens. and our healing looks very different, right? So your healing, when you got home or when you left that office, what happened next?
This is the juicy part. So I left the doctor's office and I went back to the office and walked home. And it was right around sunset, and it was, I think, anyway, it was right around June 13th or something like that, 15th of 1995.
No.
And I stopped in a church on 11th Street and Broadway. It's called Grace Church. And I was just drawn there. I'd never gone in there before. I couldn't believe it was open, that the door was open. And I was just sucked in. And I knew.
Let's wait. You felt
needed
like you were being pulled in? You felt like you had to go in? Like, let's slow that down a teeny bit.
I felt like, because of what I had just experienced with my doctors, who I had basically hung everything on to,
All your faith on
all
them.
my faith and everything on someone else external, right? And that they had given up on me. I thought, I don't have any option. I need to turn somewhere where I haven't really truly turned yet. And it was a conscious decision, but there was something much stronger happening. And I was just drawn there. Again, I didn't go to that church. I didn't know anybody who went there. I was surprised to learn that it was an Episcopal church, which is how I grew up. And I walked in, and I remember right before I walked in, I noticed that the sun was setting. And it was coming down, streaming down, whatever that is, 11th Street or 12th Street, right there from the west. And so it was coming in, and they have this huge, incredibly beautiful rosary window. Absolutely stunning. If I would highly recommend people going there just to do it. Anyway. The reason I bring that up is because when I walked in, it was basically empty in there. At least it was for me. All I saw was this pool of stained glass reflected light from the sunset streaming through. And I knew right where I was supposed to be. Of course, I'm gay.
Yep.
I had to but it was so much stronger than that. It's what has become kind of the underlying theme of my whole story. I knew I had to go to the light. Right. I knew it, and I didn't understand why. I didn't process it or anything. I just was drawn to it. And that's where I went, and I couldn't even stand up. I literally just fell to my knees and surrendered everything. It was my breaking point. And I knew that I needed to go there. I knew that I needed to go there completely and fully and surrender everything. And I made a contract, and I have to share the contract, because to this day it is just, beyond beautiful to me. And I don't know. I think,
were you, I wonder if it was that you made the contract, or you finally knew what the contract was. That's what they're bringing me to. Like, no, this was it all along, and you finally saw it.
Something, because you're right. I didn't sit there and think. I didn't think of what words I was going to say. I didn't.
Yeah, you couldn't have.
I literally, I felt truly, and this is no exaggeration, as though I was drawn in, go to the light, pushed down. I was that weak. I was just that resigned.
Like, it's all over.
It is all over. And it was kind
left.
of like, just give it up.
Right. Just, if you're going to take me, take like this, just.
God's got this.
God's got this.
Give it up. And it was, I only in that moment understood truly what anybody else has ever been talking about when they say, just surrender. Just surrender yourself. Turn yourself over to God.
Inside out. Inside out.
It's an inside out thing, because it's not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. And that's why I keep pointing here. Like, that's the gem. That's the treasure. And I guess I knew that in order to get that treasure out, I had to just completely give it up and open myself to whatever it was. I was no longer in control. I hadn't been for years. No longer pretending to be in control of my story.
Mm-hmm.
And my contract basically went like this. I just said, if it is your will, take me now, and please just get it over with. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I don't want to do this anymore. I just don't want to carry all of this anymore. Or give me the health and the strength and the energy to go out into the world and be the light in the darkness, so that others don't have to experience the fear that I'm walking right now. And that was it. I prayed. I didn't think of any. It came out just that quickly. I had no idea where it had come from. It came from here. And there was a feeling behind it, that intentional feeling. And I felt the feeling behind it, that I knew that it was my cry into the universe, into spirit, that for help. And also my commitment to do my part. And I said it out loud also. I then said something about what a waste this would be, this 32-year-old life. And even though I was so sick and told that I was dying and my physical body was dying, my spiritual body was opening up and taking over. And I just thought, don't let this 32 years go to waste. Like, let's fix this and use it so that somehow I can turn everything inside out and share with everyone that I come across this light. And that love comes from the inside out, not the outside, even though we want to make sure we look okay.
Right.
You got it.
There, I got it. Yeah.
And it's just what happened next was almost unbelievable. On the way out of the church, I was just a crying, snotty mess, and who wouldn't be? And I opened the big, huge wooden door, and I started to walk out, and I turned around and I looked back up at the altar and this beautiful cross hanging over it. And I pointed up at the cross, and I just said, you know what? Just give me a sign that you've heard me. Give me a clue that I'm going to know what to do. And don't make it a riddle. And I remember saying exact words, please don't make it some white dove or a butterfly. I need it to be a piano hitting me over the head. Be careful what you wish for. And I walked out. 2 nights later, there was the most beautiful sunset in the entire world. One of those, I don't know what those clouds are. They're kind of striped. The whole sky is striped with clouds. And the sunset was picking up every one of the clouds and streaming through all of the empty spaces. And it was just stunning. I stopped people on the street when Steve and I were going to dinner. And, here I was supposedly dying, right? And I just felt so oddly connected to that sunset. I wish we had had cell phones back then. I would have had a picture of it. But I was stopping people on the street in New York and pointing up and saying, do you see that?
Mhm.
Like, it's absolutely stunning, the light. And I couldn't shut up about it. And we had a really nice dinner, went home, we're going to bed. Again, everything I'm going through, and I'm still holding down my job and working at the ad agency and going to all these doctors and stopping in the church and making contracts and still doing the drug trial. And this was 2 nights before the last day of the drug trial at this point. And Steve, I thought he was joking, like, okay, yeah, good night, good night. And I hadn't even laid down. I swear he didn't even lay down. He was just on his way down and started snoring. And I noted it. I thought, what is going on? Like, are you joking me? And I literally thought he was kidding. I'm like nudging him, and no, he was out. And I just thought, that is ridiculous. And this storm had started outside. That's why the clouds were like they were at the sunset. And it was a raging electrical storm. And I laid down and thought, okay, I'm exhausted. I hope I get a good night's sleep. But somehow I was oddly connected equally as much as to the sunset to this storm. And it was one of those electrical storms where every 2 minutes, probably, not even, it was every 1 minute, there was crazy lightning and thunder. And I felt every single bolt. I can't describe it any other way than I felt plugged into the storm in a way that I'd never been before. And we had the blinds closed and everything, but it was very strange. I felt like energy coursing through me. It didn't hurt. There was nothing like that. It was just a beautiful connection to something greater than I'd ever experienced before. And as I lay there listening to Steve snoring, aware of every single bolt of lightning and clap of thunder, I just became aware of the fact that I wasn't going to sleep that night. I can't describe it. It wasn't one of those anxious, oh God, my mind's racing. It wasn't like that. It was almost as if it had been communicated to me. I didn't hear a voice. I've been asked this a million times, but it was something internal that spoke to me. And I just thought,
Call it the knowing.
Yeah, the knowing. Okay. And it was interesting to me because I it's not that I didn't believe it. I just thought, I'm so exhausted, I need to sleep. What ended up happening, and I'm not going to go through all of the details today, I don't think. I'm sure we don't have time for that. But what ended up happening next was so otherworldly, so extraordinary that it has taken me, when was that, 1995? I can't do the math that fast.
It's a long damn time ago.
It's a long time, right?
Yeah.
However many years that is.
Yeah.
Why can't I just think numbers? Because I'm thinking of the story.
Because it's 26 years ago.
6 years ago. Yeah, going on 27 actually. And I was given, the first thing that happened is I started to lose control of my limbs. My arms started kind of going out to the side. If you're Steve, I'll be very careful. I was just out to like this, and my arm was banging on Steve. And I'm thinking, what is going on? What is that? And I thought, if I pull my arm back in, if I focus on it, I can bring it in. And I'm like, but it wants to go out. So I let it, and this arm went out. And before I knew it, there's no other way to describe it. My feet crossed. I was Jesus on the cross. It was the only thing that came to my mind, especially because every time the lightning struck, it was somehow reflecting off the blinds, that instead of folding them this way, you know, those louvered blinds, that we had folded them this way that night. And so somehow the lightning was reflecting off and
Hitting the ceiling.
it was hitting the ceiling, but it was hitting the white ceiling fan against the white ceiling, which was 14 feet up. And I couldn't see the white ceiling fan. All I could see were the shadows that was happening. And it was not one, but three crosses. Every single time the lightning struck. And here I am laying like this, and it's dancing on the ceiling as the lightning would, you know, strike. And I was just filling up with so much emotion and so much energy from the storm, from God.
Yes, that's clear.
To be clear. And yeah, and then after that, I think the next thing to jump to would be the life review. I was given a full life review, which probably lasted for 2.5 or 3 hours. It seemed like, even though it was going as fast as you couldn't even, none of us could talk it that
you
quickly.
couldn't stop it or anything because it was happening. You were seeing it. You weren't dreaming it. It wasn't like,
completely seeing it. And it wasn't like it was playing on the ceiling. It was playing somewhere in the empty space right here. And it was outside of my head because my eyes were open, but I was being shown, and it the only way to describe it, and I can't wait to share with you why this is the first time I've shared this story.
I know this
publicly.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to tell you why too, but the only way to describe it is that I wasn't just shown events that took place in my life. I was shown the event. I was immediately, in a split second, aware of whatever action I had taken or whatever thing I had said and how it impacted anybody else who was involved in that event. So I was immediately aware it wouldn't just be one person. It was a ripple effect of everyone who that action had impacted and how it impacted, how it made them feel. And now I was being given all of that as a big gift. And it was absolutely incredible. It's so indescribable that it does make it very, very difficult to find words to describe it. I now understand why so many people who have had a near-death experience resist talking about it, because I think, you know, it's going to be a lot of people's goal to persecute or to find, you know, to be skeptical. Healthy skepticism is wonderful and very welcome. But
making sure that you do it justice with your words.
I wanted to make sure I was accurate with my words. And I feel like there's no more important time for anybody who has stories like this to be sharing them, because this that we're all experiencing the last couple of years is a spiritual battle. And that this is my way of bringing my light, the light into the conversation. And there is absolutely no fear. There's awe. I still carry around a sense of awe and euphoria and bliss. The details that happened over the course of the next 2 nights, the information that was downloaded through me that I passed on to my team of doctors, where their mouths dropped open and they looked at me and said, no smiling, no, very serious. Who are you? Why are you, who gave you this information? I was telling them information about the drug trial that I was in, that I had no access to that information. And I was telling them what they needed to do to change the drugs to make them better.
So you were channeling.
I was channeling.
God was giving you information for the greater good. Again, using you to come out and tell another kind of group of people, like leading them to an answer, like you did in the beginning with leading your friends to getting tested, to being responsible.
Yeah.
And now you're doing it for doctors. You're teaching them to be responsible.